Hi everyone, we are Group 6 and today we are pleased to present our cultural perspective project tutors. High context and low context communication, a cultural lens on intercultural misunderstanding between Eastern and Western communication styles. Our group consists of 4 members, Lupin Nhi, Vũ Thị Khánh An, Nguyễn Thị Minh Trang, and Nguyễn Kiều Anh Khoa. Communication is an essential part of our daily life. However, people from different cultures often communicate in very different ways. Sometimes misunderstandings occur not because people speak different languages, but because they have different expectations about how messages are conveyed and understood. To illustrate this, let's start with a simple workplace conversation. Second one, a common workplace conversation. American boss, smiling, expecting a clear answer. Hello, can you finish this by tomorrow? And then Vietnamese employee is this warriors looks glorious. I will try my best. Scan through the next day. American was confused. Wait, I thought you said yes. Vietnamese employee embarrassed. No, I mean probably not. I will just saw the American manager understood the phrase I will try my best as a commitment to completing the task. What the employee interpreted is a polite way to express uncertainty. This type of misunderstanding is quite common in multicultural work environments and cross-cultural communication. So that's why we chose this topic. We wanted to explore how different communication styles can lead to different interpretations of the same message. Cultural difference influence communication style and misunderstanding can occur even when people speak the same language. And communication is also shaped by cultural value and expectations. Our research question were how the difference between high context and low context communication affects intercultural interaction in daily life. To answer the question, we analyze real-world communication using intercultural cultural theory. Our words were to explain our theory, to analyze real-world communication, to identify cultural themes, and to reflect on intercultural communication. Instead of conducting a survey, our team shows the cultural, uh, perspective project. We selected two authentic shows, signed from the film Lost in a Generation, 2003, and a YouTube video in which foreigners describe their communication experience in Vietnam. And from the documents, we recorded key conversations, uh, observed verbal and non-verbal communication, and apply intercultural communication theories. Because our project analyzes only a small number of examples, our conclusions should be understood as observation rather than generalizations. Our presentation has 5 parts. First, I will explain the key concept. Next, my teammates will analyze two real-life examples. Then we will discuss the strengths and limitations of the theories. Finally, we will conclude with some practical suggestions for effective intercultural communication. Now, let's begin with the theoretical background. Okay, so what is culture? Before discussing communication styles, we should first understand culture. According to all, culture is not simply about food, clothing, or festival. Culture also shapes how people think, communicate, express emotion, and build relationships. Many cultural values are intangible, like the submerged part of an iceberg, because the underlying values influence communication. People from different cultures can interpret the same message in different ways. Okay, so what is high context or low context communication? Culture influence not only language but also how people think, interpret meaning, and build relationships. Edward T.O. introduced the concept of high contextual and low contextual communication in 1976. These two styles describe the degree to which information is conveyed directly through speech, through speech, and the degree to which it depends on context. In high context culture, people typically communication indirectly. Listeners are expected to understand meaning from facial expressions, silent relationship, or situation. Countries often described as having relatively high context include Japan, China, Korea, and Vietnam. Also, communication style can vary between individual and situations. Conversely, low context of culture favor direct communication. Speakers typically express their ideas clearly through speech. Common examples include the United States, Germany, Australia, and the Netherlands. It's important to remember that the categories are not absolute. People may communicate differently depending on their personality, occupation, or specific situations.
ミスターボブさん、あなたは書斎にゆっくりと座っています。そしてテーブルの上にはサントリーウイスキーがあります。わかりますね？感情を込めてゆっくりとカメラを見て優しく、そしてあなたの古い友達に会うように言ってください。カサブランカのボギーのように君の瞳に乾杯。サントリータイム。
He wants you to turn, look in camera. Okay?
That's all he said?
Thank you. Now let's look at our first case study, Lost in Translation 2003. We chose this scene because it clearly shows the intercultural misunderstanding between Japanese and American communication. And the film tells the story of two Americans visiting Japan. And to make our analysis more systematic, we recorded a portion of the dialogue and also observed nonverbal behaviors. And here is the key except from the scene. Our first cultural theme is indirect communication and high contact communication. The language features we observe here have long explanations. The meaning depends on the context, and the language feature have condensed interpretation. With the hidden assumption, the speaker also argue that harmony is more important than directness, and shared understanding is also expected. And according to Hall's theory, people in high context communication often convey to context rather than explicit words. Therefore, the American actor felt that important information was missing because he expected the communication to be full and direct. Our second cultural theme is the different expectation about communication. The Japanese participant and American actor have different expectations regarding effective communication. The American expectation is clear, explicit, and detailed instruction. Conversely, the Japanese expectation seem to have implicit meaning, shared understanding, and indirect communication. The difference can also be explained using hostile individualism. People from collectivism culture may value harmony, shared understanding, and indirect communication more. Meanwhile, people from individualist culture often value clarity, efficiency, and direct expression. So therefore, the understanding is not due to poor communication skill, but rather to differing cultural expectation. And now let's move from a film to a real world example in Vietnam. And I would like to invite the third speaker.
After 1 year, you're like, is this guy still singing karaoke at 2 in the morning? I would like to sleep. Is this guy still gonna cut the road in front of me and I'm almost gonna crash there? I really had a hard time. And one day I had that epiphany moment when I was like, okay, I'm not gonna come here and tell the people of Vietnam, me, French guy, think that you should do otherwise because you drive like nutcase or something like this. Like, who am I to do this? I'm a guest in that country. If I want to stay here, just take it in. You know, if you're not happy, leave here. If you're not happy, you just get out of here, go back to your country 100%. So you gotta love it. After 1 year, you're like, is this guy still singing karaoke at 2 in the morning? I would like to sleep. Is this guy still gonna cut the road in front of me and I'm almost gonna crash there?
In the selected clip, some prominent expressions include, after 1 year, I really had a hard time. Who am I to do this? I'm a guest in that country. If I want to stay here, just stay in it. These statements show that the speaker is gradually shifting from judging unfamiliar behaviors to accepting and understanding them within their cultural context. Our third cultural theme is cultural adaptation and respect for the host culture. Instead of expecting Vietnamese people to change their behavior, the speaker gradually changes their own perspective. Several linguistic features support this theme: reflective language, self-questioning, identity awareness, and acceptance of cultural differences. For example, when he says, "Who am I to do this? I'm a guest in that country," he realized that he should understand the local culture before judging it. Then he says, "If I want to stay there, just stick in it." This shows a willingness to adapt rather than expecting others to communicate according to one's own cultural expectation. According to Hall's high context communication theory, communication can only be fully understood within its cultural context. Once the speaker begins to interpret the behavior through that context, their understanding will change. This example also relates to hostess individualism versus collectivism. Instead of judging Vietnamese communication according to their own cultural norms, the speaker becomes more open to different cultural values and expectations. Finally, phase negotiation theory, developed by Stella Ding to me, suggests that successful intercultural communication involves respecting both one's own identity and that of others. By adjusting their expectations instead of criticizing local customs, speakers demonstrate greater cultural sensitivity and have maintained positive relationships. These examples remind us that effective intercultural communication requires not only linguistic ability but also openness, respect, and cultural awareness. Before delving into the strength and limitation of the theories, we want to compare our two case studies. Cross-case comparison. What do both cases tell us? Although one example from a film and other from a real-life interviews, both illustrate how communication is strongly influenced by cultural expectation. In the film Lost in Translation, the Japanese director provides lengthy explanation while the interpreter only summarizes briefly. Much of the meaning is conveyed through context, self-understanding, and nonverbal behavior. In the YouTube interview, the speaker initially struggled to understand everyday communication in Vietnam. However, after reflecting on his experience, he realized that successful communication required adapting to the local context rather than expecting others to communicate according to his own expectations. Although the situation differ, both examples highlight the same idea. Both cases demonstrate that successful intercultural communication depends on understanding how high contextual communication shapes the interpretation of meaning the different cultural contexts. Instead of suggesting one communication style is better than another, both cases encourage greater openness, flexibility, and respect for cultural differences. However, we wish to emphasize that our findings are based on only two authentic sources. Therefore, they should be understood as observations rather than generalizations about Japanese or Vietnamese culture. Now, I invite the fourth speaker to discuss the strengths and limitations of these theories.
Thank you. So far, we have seen that host theory can help explain the differences in communication both in movies and real-world experiences. However, like any theory, it has both strength and limitation. About the benefit of the theory, fair negotiation theory also suggests that indirect language can help protect the social image of both speakers. First, host theory provides a simple and useful framework for understanding why people communicate differently. Instead of assuming one communication style is better than another, the theory encourages us to appreciate cultural diversity. Second, it helps people prepare for cross-cultural communication situations such as studying abroad, traveling, and working in international companies. Understanding different communication styles can minimize misunderstanding and improve teamwork. Finally, the theory reminds us to pay attention not only to verbal communication but also to the non-verbal communication, relationship, and cultural context. Limitation. Despite the advantage, host theory also has some important limitations. First, communication styles are not fixed. Not everyone from the same country communicates in the same way. For example, younger people who have studied abroad or work in the international environment may communicate more directly than older generations. Second, culture is only one factor influencing communication. Personality, education level, occupation, age, and personal experience also shape how people express themselves. And therefore, we should avoid making generalizations based solely on nationality. Finally, our project only analyzes how authentic source of information. Different sources may yield different results. Therefore, our conclusion cannot represent all culture. Instead, our findings suggest that communication style can influence understanding between culture in specific contexts. Therefore, the observation should be interpreted cautiously and not treated as a universal truth. Thank you. In summary of our project, explore how high context and low context communication influence intercultural interactions. Using host theory, hosted cultural dimension, and phrase negotiation theory, we analyze both film scenes and real-life communications experiment. Our analysis reveals that misunderstanding often occur because people have different expectations about how message should be conveyed or interpreted. Instead of judging a particular communication style as right or wrong, we should recognize that each style reflects different cultural value. Developing intercultural competence means learning to communicate openly, curiously, and respectfully. As globalization continues to bring people from different cultures closer together, understanding the differences in communication is becoming increasingly important for learning, work, and daily life. And finally, we want to emphasize that our project only considers a limited number of examples. This comparison shows that our conclusions are based on patterns observed across different types of validated data, not a single example. And therefore, our findings should not be used to generalize across all culture, but rather to encourage further discussion and learning instead of simply learning the rule of different culture. This project reminds us to pay more attention to the language, context, and meaning that people create together in the process of communication. The following are references. Thank you for listening.